So this is a weird video because I actually want to talk about why I don't think you should get this, but rather you should get this with my modification, which I guess is a little bit of self-promotion, though the modification is free, so not really promotion, I guess. No, this was designed to be a minimalistic mod to the 42178 Surface Space Loader LT78. That is such a long name to remember off the top of my head, but this is a fantastic vehicle, even in its base model. And yeah, I know it's called a loader, and yeah, I know it leaves a lot to be desired as a loader, but that's why I modified the loader itself. Everything else remains mostly the same. In fact, the transformation feature, the steering on it is identical. The payload is identical, save for the fact I added a lightsaber bar in there to suggest lighting, but that's something we'll get to. No, what has changed? Just a couple of things. First off, the lift mechanism now goes in the opposite direction. And yes, I know I covered this in a previous video and some changes have been made since then, but I want to talk about specifically why I think this is better than that large $150, 1,600 piece behemoth that it just feels like it should have been cheaper. And I'm not the only person to think about this. Now, here's the thing. I've been clamoring at the keyboard trying to watch and consume all I can about these vehicles specifically. And though I found a lot of blogs talking about them, not actually that many videos have covered the large vehicle specifically, the big Mars exploration vehicle, whatever its name is. I'm not trying to remember two of these names. No, but the video that I did see actually came from Duckbricks, a fellow Bionicle YouTuber here, but who also covers Lego as well. And his is actually the first one that I've seen to cover that vehicle specifically because it was a mega review. And I'm actually going to leave it linked in the description so you can check it out. Because if you want to learn about that giant vehicle, well, that's a good resource. You probably have to scrub to about the middle of the vehicle because it is a mega review, so it has all of the Lego Technic space sets in it. But suffice to say, this I think is just better. And this is like a $40 set here, including the crane. If you take the crane out, obviously $35, so it's about a $5 modification if you don't have these pieces already. And of course, you could swap them out for whatever you have handy, whatever colors you have. Some things I did here are purely decorative, like the little tank and the little bending pole here. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. But what I did change adds so much value to this set, in my opinion. First off, that loader now moves in the opposite direction. That just makes more sense to me. I know it seems a little bit weird at first. Why would you do it that way? But I have to think about this like it's a real vehicle for a second, on another planet for that matter. First off, it probably takes a lot of time if the character wanted to get out of the cockpit here to adjust to the new atmosphere on their planet, assuming that this cockpit, pretending that this cockpit is fully airtight, its own separate atmosphere. So you're probably going to want to get out of that as little as possible. Having something like this payload here, you don't know how much it's going to weigh because you don't necessarily know what items you're going to be examining inside of there. And that's how I like to think about it. Not as an airtight bubble, but rather as a sort of examination room with a protective layer around it, right? So it's not designed to be airtight. It doesn't need to remove objects from the atmosphere that they were picked up from. It just needs to be able to transport them. And then it can go to a facility where it can be, I don't know, cleaned up, but what I think is important here is that means that you don't know what weight is going to be in there and you need to be able to compensate for that. So having the lift actually go over center of the vehicle like this means you're shifting that weight towards the center of the vehicle, including the weight of the boom arm itself. It also means that you're actually moving the profile of the vehicle so it doesn't stick out so far to one side, but it gets a lot closer to the center. And that's actually important for another feature here, which is actually sort of a 2-in-1. Right now you can see that the boom arm is off to the side here, and that might look a little bit ugly, but it actually can fold up, and I'll talk about why it's like this, well, now. So currently, the way that this payload actually goes in this assembly here, it's just dropped in. It just aligns itself. But that means that it's not fixed in with anything. There's nothing to secure it. So why not use the arm to secure it itself? And that's exactly what's going on here. That arm is currently attached to a little thing on the side of this payload bed. And so you might think, oh, well, you need to unlock it. No, you just turn a gear and it takes itself off. It just unlocks itself. So yeah, you turn the gear, you move the arm out of the way, and the payload is completely free to move. And even better, that lock, that little toilet paper roll there, can hold a second payload. That's just clever parts usage. That's all that is. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but it's important, right? Because why not have that there? Yeah, it moves the profile out one more module, but it's still roughly in line with the front wheels anyway. So like, who cares, And having it there Does mean that, yeah, if I move the lift, it's probably going to knock whatever's hanging on there off because it's going to hit the tire. Sure, that's fine. But it's the fact that you get the option to carry two that I think is important here. You don't have to do it. And even better still, it sticks out even further from the original vehicle, so the steering is not impeded, which is pretty neat. Plus, it was just a filler position anyway, so otherwise it was just going to be bushings there. Why not use it for an extra purpose? Swapping out one piece, giving you the ability to lock them. It's great. Anyway, so what can the boom do? Well, on its own, there's a gear on the back here. I'm going to move the platform again, and you can move that gear, although I need to actually push this back down for a minute. But yeah, the gear itself will actually rotate the arm. There is a friction adder in there, sort of. That's something you'll probably figure out in the build, which will be made freely available. And so that was clicking, but don't worry too much about that. That has a full 360-degree unimpeded range. So it can move, it can rotate indefinitely. And that's pretty cool. And two gears on the side. One is a direct drive of the arm itself. So utilizing this gear means that the arm can go down slightly past flush with the top of the vehicle and back. So over 180 degrees, just barely. And in fact, can go so far as to reach below the vehicle. It can go subterranean, which is pretty cool, meaning you can think of it as a sort of precision excavator, and that's neat. Is it necessary to have that function? No, but does it add to it? Yes, absolutely, especially if you want to use this for play, right? On top of that, though, if we move this gear back up, not only does this gear on the side here move it at this knuckle, but even better, oh, actually, let me fold that the other way so you can see. So my arm's not in the way. This actually folds up completely. That's it. How cool is that? It's simple, but it's effective. It's a knuckle that also compacts it. Very simple assembly, very simple to understand how it works, but it's very lovely that it can. And even better still, it doesn't have to store off to the side. You saw how clunky that looked. So why not store it in the front of the vehicle where that little gap is? There's nothing there right now, so why not use it? Of course, the vehicle is not going to be transformed all of the time. So if we actually flip this around, which yes, does take a handful of turns, of course, like 20 something, the mechanism here is beautiful to watch. So I'm not going to complain about it. And of course, the gear ratio for this can be changed, can be modified, but now that gap is gone. So where does the crane go? Well, it just fits into the opening here. Nothing too fancy going on there. It just works. It just works. That's it. That's all you need, in my opinion. As a loader, I think this is honestly exceptional. You could also store it off to the side, I guess, like this, if the payload isn't there. And of course, if you were somebody who gets kind of annoyed by the fact that the payload bed is there in the first place, you can remove this as well. And in fact, that's the last thing I want to add. If I can figure out a way to do it that is going to remain flush with the white panels on the front, I'd personally like to add the ability to attach the payload bed up there as well, so you have different places to put it. Is it necessary? No, but would it be nice? Sure, it can't hurt anything, right? So why not? Of course, you know, when this transforms, these things move, and I think that that is really the claim to fame for this vehicle, the fact that it has those transformations. The other modifications that I made have all been very simple, just to the front of the vehicle, basically just the arms, giving them extra posability. So now you have double joints in there that can reach the ground even when it is fully transformed, which is great. And on top of that, going back into that transformation mode, I showcased the fact that this crane can reach the ground, but it is pretty far back on the vehicle. So wouldn't it be cool if it could reach over and in fact in front of the bay where the character sits, the cockpit, whatever, right? And it can. Not only can it do that, it can actually hold this with its side open here in place. This is a little bit hard for me to show off because, you know, I'm not on a table here. And again, I've already displayed a lot of this in a separate video, so I'm not really showing you guys anything new now, but yeah, it can just connect to the actual, there it goes. Just like that. A lot easier to do when you're not trying to hold it in front of the camera. But yeah, and so now whatever's inside of that payload can be observed through the glass, meaning that the character that's driving it never has to leave their atmosphere. And that's pretty cool. I think that's really important. It's a simple thing, and it's not completely necessary by any means, but it's so nice to have it, you know? It's little things like this that I think really make a lot of sense. Plus, if you want to push it off to the side, just closing that back up, it can actually drop the payload on the ground in front of the vehicle too. So you could even do that. You could manipulate it with the arms underneath the vehicle, which it has the other one over here. I keep pushing out of the way. So like, this is it. This this is what I recommend. That's the whole point of this video. So Lego making the large exploration vehicle is cool. It's a step in the right direction, 100%. And I really hope this is not a one and done, you know, type of Lego space thing. I really want to see this space crossover last, especially in Technic, even if it's just like a one set next year or later this summer or something like that. You know, even if it's just, you know, we're going to do Technic, but one of those Technic sets will be space, or I would love that stuff. And for other themes to do it too, because I think that this has a lot of value. This set has a lot of value. However, it really depends on what you want to derive your value and your entertainment from. I love mechanisms, and this is jam-packed with mechanisms. This is not jam-packed with mechanisms. It has features. And lastly, defining those features, it's honestly kind of simple. To me, a mechanism is something that is driven by like complex geometry or complex gearing and stuff like that, whereas a feature is more or less just manipulated by hand. In the case here, you can see there's a boom on the back of this vehicle, and I believe it is at the very least geared to rotate, and potentially the bottom portion is geared as well. In fact, I know it is because there's a linear actuator underneath it. Not necessary, but nice to have, sure. However, the second joint, the knuckle in this, is purely manual. You unfold it yourself. The gearing for the winch on the very top of the crane is manual. Or not manual, but you know, it's just gears adding friction. That's all it is. You're directly driving that stuff. It leaves nothing to the imagination in that way. Whereas this, you get to see how all this little stuff interacts, how these lift arms, when bent specific ways, perform, how they do when they cross over each other to make that compact folding mechanism that also then bends when it passes like it's halfway. It's simple stuff like that that I adore. So that's really everything I wanted to talk about in this video. $150 for one of those. $150 buys you 4 of these. I'm not including tax, and I'm definitely rounding considering that this one is modded. You get the point. I'd much rather have 4 of these. It's 16 gray wheels. It's 4 of those pod canopy pieces. It's so much of the reddish orange, you know? And on top of that, it's just a lovely looking little build. So that's pretty much it for this one. I definitely endorse this set, even in its base model. I think you will really find it enjoyable. Don't look at it as a loader. I know that that's what the name implies. Look at it as a transformation vehicle that has the ability to carry something on the side, that has rear wheel steering, and I think you'll be happy. With all that being said, of course, you can check out the Discord, Instagram, and Patreon if you want to help support this channel or my acquisition of other space sets for future videos, I guess. Those will all be linked in the description below. And of course, you can join the conversation down in the comments. Make sure you like and subscribe. It does really help the channel out, and it tells YouTube you want to see more stuff like this. I'll see you all in the next one. And of course, if you want to check out the review for the large vehicle, that will be Duck Bricks video down in the description as well. Take care.